right. Well, good evening, everybody. How's everyone doing out there today? Good, excellent. Well, welcome. We got a nice crowd here today, and you're going to enjoy a really great show here we got planned for you, our late night show. We have a special guest artist here today that's going to be making and designing our piece for us. This is Catherine Labonté, and she's going to be helped by her assistant, Patrick Primo. So let's give them a round of applause. Welcome them to the stage. Our visiting artists, they're here from Montreal, Canada. So they came down to do some demos here for us today. We also have some members of our own team, Mr. Eric Snee and G. Brian Juck. Let's give them a round of applause. They'll be helping out as well. My name is Joe Falzoni, and I'll be narrating for you all today. This is also going to be live streamed, so we have a cameraman up here, and we have a man over there that's going to be fielding questions as they come in online. And so we're really excited. We're excited to get things started. And what we're making here today is a giant hippo. So we're going to be making a big hippo. We've got a drawing in the back here of it. This is going to be a pretty good size from what I gather, this hippo that we're going to be making here today. It's going to be a green hippo. Is that right, Catherine? It's going to be a green hippo today. Excellent. So we have some colors laid out. We've got a team of people here. There's going to be a lot of activity going on up here, so it should be really excited. Catherine has been blowing glass for a little over 15 years now, and mainly working out of, remind me again, what's the name of that studio that you guys work out of? Whimsical Glass Studio, and that's outside of Montreal. Excellent, excellent. So they're down here visiting. You might have seen Catherine over in the market earlier today. She was selling her wares over there called she was calling it the Adopt a Pet, because she makes these really whimsical, really characteristic kind of animals. They're a lot of fun. They got a lot of character to them. So if you bought one of her animals today, you also got a little birth certificate along with it, which is really nice. It gives it a lot of character. It's a lot of fun. She's always been interested in these kind of whimsical designs and characteristic type of designs. So we're going to incorporate that into her work today, which I really like. I like it when artists are allowed to have fun and really brings that energy into their work. And that's always great to see. So we got a lot of different things, like I said, going on. We have a garage over here. And this is just what it sounds like. It's a garage for parking parts of the glass piece during the process. And when you're making sculptural type work like this, you usually assemble it in parts. So you might make the feet or the arms and different things first. And you put it away in our garage. We keep it nice and warm. And then at the end, it all comes together and everything gets assembled all at once. But just like all glass pieces, you got to start off with a gather of glass. So that's what Patrick has done for us now. He's gathered up a little gather of glass. He's got a little color at the end of it. He's put some clear glass over it. Oh, great. Yeah, this is excellent. Let me see one of these here. This would be have a good example we could show everybody. These are some of her fun creations that Catherine makes here. Aren't these excellent? Got a lot of character to them. Smiling cat. This is a lot of fun. So this is kind of what we're going for today, except the hippo instead of a cat. And it's going to be a lot larger, too, from what I understand. That's why we got some of these big arms up here. G. Brian. They keep pointing at each other. They're like, no, you're going to do it. You're going to do it. But excellent. We got the cat and the elephant. You can see those down here. Lots of fun. So I believe the way we're starting off with this piece is we're going to be making the feet for the hippo first. So like I said, we kind of make certain parts of the animal first, and then we'll put it away in the garage. There's our drawing up there. If you're looking up on the big screen, you can see this at home, of course, here on the internet. And they're pretty precise. They've got measurements and everything, so we're going for a certain kind of dimension and everything. So that's what we're working on first. We're going to design the feet for the hippo first. See, Patrick's got a little bit of glass at the end of his pipe. He's using a little tool there, that pad that you saw in his hand. It's one of our more specialized tools that we use. That's folded up wet newspaper. Yeah. It's one of our more sophisticated tools that we use in the glass studio. But now you can see he's getting really sophisticated. He's got the calipers out. That wet newspaper works out really well. We keep it soaked in water, so it really just rides on a layer of steam when that water is evaporating. It's got that little bit of a carbon buildup. That really helps the glass glide back and forth on that newspaper. And it's about as close as we can get as glass blowers to actually touching the glass. And you got just the palm of your hand. It's used with this pad, and you're able to shape the glass. It's a great tool to use. They don't last very long, of course. You got to replace them maybe every 5 days, but since it's newspaper, it's one of our cheaper tools to replace. It works out really well. All right, so they're starting to discuss the plan of attack here. This is going to be one of the feet for the hippo. And you can see on the drawing, there's the little nails on the hippo's foot. So they're going to start applying bits of color for the feet, for the nails on the foot. And while they're doing that, Patrick, you're getting started on another foot. Is that right? So it helps, to have a team of people, especially when you're making a piece that's a little bit more complicated like this. Then you can have multiple things kind of happening at once, different people doing different parts of the project. That certainly speeds things along, but it helps to keep everything kind of in a cohesive heat, and that way it'll all come together a lot better. So the main body, here we go, we're going to attach one of the nails right now. You can see she just snips that away. It's got that little bit of color. Now the main body, they're picking up bar color, and they're using that bar to color the glass. And color could come to a couple different ways. But here's a couple quick examples of just bar color. So this is concentrated color down in a bar form. You can see obviously this one's a opaque white. Well, we have a condensed bar of color here. Now it looks black, but this is actually a gold ruby color. So it's a nice ruby red. But it's so concentrated that it just looks black. It's not until you actually blow this color out and it thins out that you actually be able to see what the color is. So the body, the main feet and the body of this piece, they're made out of bar. And these little bits of color that Eric is bringing over, he's rolling it into what we call frit. You can see that there. This is just crushed up glass color. It's all granular. It's about the size of sea salt. You can see Eric just rolls it right into that frit, and it sticks right to the surface of the glass. Then you can melt it in, and you have that color right on the surface of the glass. So there's a couple quick ways of just applying color. Now what actually gives us our color in the glass is adding different metal oxides, metal compounds into the glass when it's in its raw state. And that'll actually change the color of the glass. So adding in different things like copper or cobalt give you a nice blue color, or iron oxide will give you a nice green. Manganese will give you a nice purple. Cadmium, gold, all kinds of different metals added in will actually change the color of the glass. Now you see every time Catherine adds on a little bit of color or shapes the glass piece up a little bit, then she goes back into our reheating chamber, and she keeps everything nice and hot. So you continually be returning to that reheating chamber throughout the process, one, to keep things nice and hot so you can continue to manipulate it. But even if you're not planning on manipulating the glass, you still have to keep the temperature of it up to a certain point. If at any time the temperature drops too much below, say around 900 degrees, the glass could crack. That's why we're making sure the temperature on the entire piece stays up. That's why we have this heated garage over here, so even when we put parts away that we want to come back to a little bit later, they'll stay nice and hot. They stay up in temperature, that way we can assemble them without worrying about them cracking apart. So Eric's made us a little punty. This is a solid steel rod, a little bit of glass on the end. You see it just attaches it right to the bottom of that hippo hoof, or I guess it would be a leg. I'm not really sure. Would that be a hoof? I think it would be a hoof. There you go. He attaches it right to the bottom with a little bit of stress on the other end. He's able to break that free. Excellent. We got one leg down. On our way. They do have toes. We do know that. We're having a little discussion over there on the technicalities of this would be a leg or a foot or a hoof. And Patrick said he could tell us in French. From Montreal. I guess it's a umpat would be what you call it in French. A foot. Yeah. So we're going to go with that. They're the artists. We're going to go with the technical definition there. Well, you can see Eric has put it away in our garage. He's got the first foot put away. That'll stay nice and warm over there. And we're just going to repeat this process. We're going to do this 4 times, get 4 different feet, and then we'll start developing the body of the piece. So Catherine, again, she's been blowing glass for over 15 years now. You have a degree in glass there, Catherine, is that right? You went to school for glass?
Yeah, I went to Espace Vert.
Okay, here.
Espace Vert.
We're gonna let Catherine put on this bit of glass. And here, what is that school called?
Espace Vert.
See, she says it so much better than I would say it. That's pretty standard for people nowadays to go to school, get a degree in glass. Of course, traditionally it was more of a factory type job. You would have been an apprentice, started off in a factory maybe at a very young age and learning over years and lots of hours how to blow glass. There's a couple places maybe still out there that do some sort of apprenticeship in glass like that, but most of the time nowadays, people go to school for glass. And most of us up here on this stage, I believe all of us. I'm not sure about Patrick. Did you go to school for glass as well? You did. So yeah, all of us on here on this stage actually went to school and have degrees. Have degrees in glass, which is pretty awesome nowadays that they have these great programs out there in different universities. There's probably about 45 different universities through the United States now, and of course there's some in Canada as well, and all around the world that offer degrees in glass. And that really gives you the time that you need to be able to develop these kinds of skills. It takes a lot of time, a lot of patience, and a lot of muscle memory to be able to develop these skills to blow glass. But I always find it's pretty unique. It's kind of a universal language. And you can see, obviously, we come from different places. This is a team of people that really hasn't worked together before. But because we understand the material and we understand the process, that it doesn't take very much for us to come together, figure things out. And it's said that even if you're in a place where you didn't speak their language, that you'd still be able to blow glass with them just because you understand the process of blowing glass. As long as you guys knew what the end product was supposed to be, the techniques stay fairly the same no matter where you're at. In fact, a lot of these techniques and processes have been around for thousands of years. Glass blowing goes back about 2,000 years. Glass itself has been around for around 4,000 years. So there's a lot of history behind glass. Now, of course, the blowing process didn't start till around 50 BC is when they believed the blowpipe was actually discovered. And that's when the actual process of blowing glass really started. In what would be modern-day Syria, Mesopotamia, during the Roman Empire, is when they believed to have developed the blowpipe. And it took a piece of iron, rolled it into a tube, gathered some glass on the end. Somebody discovered that this was just a better way of producing glass and actually blew glass into a bubble, which was a really revolutionary thing in glass. It changed the world of glass. It changed our world as we see it as well. Now, for the first time in history, you have an object that you can see through. I mean, if you can imagine, we take advantage of that nowadays because we see through things all the time. But back in those days, to be able to have an object that you can actually see into, to see what the contents of that object were, to be able to see through things, to create windows, to be able to create lenses for your eyeglasses, to be able to create lenses for microscopes and telescopes and all kinds of things. It really revolutionized the way the world worked. And now we have an era that we're living in now where glass is used in almost everything. The silica's out there in everything that we use. It's one of the second most abundant materials in the world next to carbon. A lot of people say that we're just in a glass era right now. We might be looking back in history. We think about the Iron Age and things like that. Maybe this age that we're living in now is the glass age. I'm a little biased on the subject, but I like to think of it that way. So again, we're just kind of moving right along up here, creating the different feet. It's got a nice, good flow of things going. How many did we got? We got 2 in there. We got 3 right there that Catherine has, and then as Patrick would have number 4. So we're already to 4 feet. And then we're going to start creating the body. Now earlier I was asking Patrick how large we're going to go. He said we're going to go pretty large. And we have these wooden blocks, and this is what we use to cool and shape the glass when we first gather it out of the furnace. And you'll see that again a little bit as we go into the process. And he was like, you've got some bigger ones, right? And I was like, yeah, we've got some pretty good ones. He was like, well, I don't know. And I was like, well, let me get you this one. And he said, all right, now we're talking. So I think we're going to go pretty large. We'll see if we end up going up to this size or not. All these wooden blocks here, they're made out of a cherry wood. It's a great wood for us to use. any kind of fruit wood would work. Cherry wood is most abundant for us here, so that's why we use cherry. But fruit wood really works the best for a couple of reasons. One, it's got that nice tight grain pattern, grows a lot slower than other woods, and that tight grain pattern allows it to hold moisture better. You can see these blocks are kept in a bucket of water, and it holds that water in there really good, and that way it won't burn away as quickly. Another great reason for using fruit wood is because it has a very low resin content. There's pretty much no sap in fruit woods. So if you were to use a wood like pine or something like that, as it burnt away, that resin would leave behind a residue. It would leave behind a scar on the glass. So we want a wood that burns away nice and clean. That's why we use the fruit woods. All right, one more little toe. And go. Patrick's over there shaping that final foot. And you can see at the top of each one of these feet, there's a line, a little crease. We call that the jack line. We put that in there using a pair of jacks. There we go. That's what the jacks look like. We create the jack line using the jacks. The jacks, of course, were invented by a man named Bob. I'm just kidding. Kidding with you, of course. We don't actually know who invented the jacks, but we do know that these go back about as old as the glass blowing process itself, almost about 2,000 years. These have been around. So you go back into ancient glass blowing times, you would have found a pair of jacks, almost just like this. So we're still using the same types of tools today. In fact, the whole setup, the glass setup and everything, a lot of it would have looked exactly the same thousands of years ago. Now, what has changed, of course, over time is the way that we heat our glass and the different equipment that we use. Traditionally, everything would have been heated with wood fire. So you'd have had giant wood fires, and you can get wood fires really hot, 2,000, 3,000 degrees, easy. You can use different things like bellows and stuff like that to keep them hot, but most likely you would have had a furnace that's designed in a lot like a fireplace at home. You would have had a chimney or a system that would have drawn air in to keep everything nice and hot and float out the other end. After wood fire, they started using coal to heat their glass. So I was just talking a little bit about the heat. Of course, we started off with wood fires. We moved into coal. Now our equipment up here, this is all natural gas. So we use natural gas. I've heard of people using propane as well. It could be a little bit more pricey for propane. So most of the times, if you don't have natural gas available and propane tends to be a little bit more expensive, you can also just use electric to heat your furnaces now. We have an all-electric studio up in the innovation area of our museum, if you've been up there. And that's heated all with electrical elements, kind of just like giant toasters. They're millennium disilicide elements. Don't ask me to spell it. I'm not really sure. But those electrical elements get super hot. They allow us to heat their glass. Now, I've even seen studios out there that are heated with methane. So they're built right next to landfills, and they use that reclaimed methane to heat up the studios. It's really efficient and a great way to recycle that methane instead of just letting it burn off. Now, Amanda over here, she gets questions from online viewers. How many people are watching online right now? About 120 people watching online. Great. So, Catherine, one of our questions that came in from online is what the name of this hippo is going to be. Do we have it? Do we have a name for it? Yeah. Hey, we're under. Somebody has to name it. Oh, yeah, we can. Yeah, there we go. I like that. So we can all start brainstorming here while we're sitting in the audience what the name of this hippo will be. So it doesn't have a name yet, but it needs one. I think your work and the way it's got so much character to it that yeah, it should have a name. So we'll leave it up to y'all. You can kind of think about that as we go along, what a good hippo name would be for this glass hippo. There's a lot of options out there. What was that one? Hubert, okay. Yeah. We've got some interesting name suggestions coming in online here. So we're just kind of going through a few of them. All right, so we're getting ready here. We're almost done with this final foot. And I was talking a little bit about the jack line earlier. See that little crease at the top of the foot? Which is an essential part in pretty much everything you make. You need a way to disconnect it from that blowpipe or the punty or whatever it is that you're working on, a way for it to break away. So we create that little crease at the top of the foot there. And you can see that's where she has her jacks around right now. And that's essentially a weak spot in the glass. You saw how it broke away nice and clean in that nice straight line, right? How many people have broken glass at home? It's okay. We break a lot of glass here in the glass studio. I guarantee I've probably broken way more glass than all of you. Well, when you break glass, right, it breaks in all kinds of different ways. It doesn't break in straight lines. It breaks in all kinds of different angles and directions and sizes and things like that. It's what we call conchoidal cleavage. It's the way the glass is set up. It's not really meant to break in straight lines. But by putting that little jack line in there, that little crease at the top of the glass piece, that creates a weak spot in the glass. It's kind of like a little crease in a chocolate candy bar, right? And you break it away and it breaks in that nice straight line. That's exactly what we're doing. We're creating a little crease in the glass so that when we go to break it away from the blowpipe or whatever it is that it's attached to, it breaks in a nice straight line. All right, so we've got all 4 feet right over here. Got everything tucked away. Now Patrick is picking up another bar of color. Remember I showed you those bars of color in the very beginning? So we've got another bar of color. This one's going to be a lot larger. The first bars of color were pretty small, so they were kind of hard to see at the end of the blowpipe. But now we're getting ready to make the main body of the piece, right? Moving into the main body. There we go. Patrick's got this nice section of bar. So anytime you pick up color or anything like that, now the frit, you see, we don't have this preheated. It's just kind of out in the open. But it's so small that when you actually roll the glass into it, it heats those little pieces of glass up pretty much right away, and then they just stick right to the surface. So you don't really need to preheat this because it's such small little chunks of glass. But when you have a piece of bar or anything like that, it's a little bit larger, you have to preheat that. So we'll stick it into our garage or our pickup oven over here. We'll heat it up to around 900 degrees. That way it sticks to the end of the rod real nice. But that also ensures that when we go into our reheating chamber that it doesn't actually explode. If it wasn't hot enough, it could actually explode or break apart. So we want to make sure that's nice and preheated. Interesting. Yeah, I was just over here chatting with Catherine there. It's kind of getting a little history on her. Me and her just met today, so just getting to know the artist up here. Asking her a little bit about her inspiration. Why these cute little animals? Why make those? And she was telling me that she's always been doing them. Ever since she was a kid, she's been drawing these animals. She's always been interested in them. She's been drawing this cat figure for a real long time, long as she can remember, making these little cats. And then when she came across glass, she finally found the medium that she wanted to express herself in. So she was doing painting and drawing, a little bit of sculpture before she actually found glass. And I think a lot of glass blowers kind of fall into glass that way, where you usually come from some other type of art background, or we've had art in our history, but we just didn't really find the medium that was allowing us to express ourselves freely. And then for one reason or another, we came across glass and fell in love and really found the medium that helped us express our ideas. And that's what Catherine was saying there, that she's been drawing these little animals, these cats, for a real long time, and she came across glass, and it really just translated her ideas into a three-dimensional form so perfectly. And you can see kind of the versatility of that tool, the pair of jacks that Patrick has in his hand. He's using actually the back part of it, the handle part of the jacks, to smooth out. He's getting a bubble started. This is the blow and cap method. So he's blowing a little bit of air into that blowpipe, and he actually caps it with his thumb. He traps that air inside the blowpipe, and you can see there, it just started to expand a little bit. I know you can't really see the bubble because the color is so dense, but you watch the walls of that expand just a little bit, and that tells Patrick that there's actually a bubble inside of there. So he caps that air inside with his thumb. That pressurizes the blowpipe. Now the pressure inside that pipe is trying to equalize with the pressure out here. So it's pushing through that blowpipe. It finds the hot glass. It starts to expand. And that's how we start off our initial bubble. So when you're blowing glass, everything starts in a nice, small, compact form like that. You start off with a nice little bubble, a little gather of glass, and then you build up your size from there. You can only gather so much hot glass at a time. So he's letting this cool off. Now he'll go back in. Can we do the gathering animation real quick? We have that available? So he's gathering a little glass. There we go. So you're seeing up on our monitors there. It's a great little animation we have here. It's a nice cutaway view if you're able to actually look inside of that furnace. So you see there's a giant crucible of glass underneath there. Patrick was able to dip his rod just below the layer of glass, spins in one direction, and he gathers up that little bit of glass on the end. And there you can see he's got a lot more glass than when he first went in. But again, you can only gather up so much at a time. It comes out of that furnace at 2,000 degrees. It's around the consistency of honey. So it's actually moving around pretty good. So he's always got to keep that rod turning back and forth. You know, his glass blowers never really stop turning throughout the entire process. And that's to make sure everything stays on center, but also stays on the end of the pipe. I got a good example here. We got a little bit of glass. You can see I'm obviously turning the glass, keeping it on center. But as soon as I stop turning, you can see gravity takes over, and eventually gravity's going to win. It's going to pull that glass all the way down to the ground. You can see how fluid that glass actually is. Yeah? It just kind of wants to do its own thing. That's a good example of day one glass blowing right there, actually. It's pretty much what you make first day. But lucky for us, this isn't the team's first day. They've been blowing glass for a while. They've got some good experience. So they're going to be able to make things happen. But it gives you a little bit more respect for what they're doing, right? It's not that easy to keep everything on center. Good way to try this on your own if you wanted to go home and get a little bit of honey, put it in a jar, grab a chopstick, try and gather up a little bit of honey on the end of that chopstick and keep it on the end of that chopstick while you're turning. That's about what we're dealing with up here. Always turning, trying to keep that mass of glass on center on the end of this pipe. But you can see he's cooling this down again. He's getting ready for another gather of glass. So this is building up the size of the piece. And you'll go through this process over and over again until you have the amount of glass that you're actually going to need. You're going to do three more? Oh, 2 more. 3 more? I said 3 more gathers. He says 2 more gathers. 2 more gathers will give us a lot more glass for sure. Now, knowing how much glass you're actually going to need for the piece that you want to make, well, that just comes with time and experience, knowing the material, knowing how far you can push the material. Also depends on the artist, how big they're going to make the piece, how thin or thick they want it to be at the final product. Again, that just comes with experience, but it all starts this same way. It starts in the same shape. Kind of looks like the cotton ball top of a Q-tip a little bit, right? But that's a good universal shape for us to be able to go back into the furnace again and again and gather up another layer of that hot glass. And again, same process. He'll go and sit back down and he'll use one of those wooden blocks to cool, shape, and center that gather of glass. You can see it's glowing that beautiful orange color. I wish there was a way to trap that color, but that's actually just the intensity of the heat. It's actually clear glass that's around that color, but because it's so hot, it's emitting that nice orange glow. That's what we call black body radiation, when something is so intensely hot that it's actually releasing its own energy, its own light source. This happens in nature with lava coming out of a volcano, right? It's right around that same temperature, 2,000 degrees. So molten rock is emitting its own energy, its own light source. That's why it's glowing that beautiful orange color. Now, a lot of people wonder why we don't have gloves. How are we able to hold on to this metal pipe with 2,000 degrees of glass at the end? Isn't the metal pipe heat up? Well, the short answer is yes, it does heat up, but it doesn't actually heat up that far. The metal pipes that we're using are stainless steel, which is a pretty poor conductor of heat, actually. You might have seen Patrick over here on this little device. This is a handy little device we call our pipe cooler. So it's just a little tray of water when it fills up, and then you can roll your pipe into it, and that helps cool everything down. It makes it a lot easier for us to hold on to it. But you do notice when you're looking at the pipe, there's a little bit of a discoloration towards the end of the pipe. Right here at the end, you can see it starts to darken. Where the steel starts to darken a little bit, we affectionately call this area the hospital zone. Yeah. We don't want to go to the hospital zone. That's where you don't want to go. You learn that pretty quickly in glass, where to put your hands and where not to put your hands. But it only really heats up about like that. And even right here, where I'm touching my hand, I can feel the heat a little bit. It's no warmer than a cup of coffee. So beyond that, it starts to get a lot warmer. But over in this area, it stays nice and cool. Now, the glass, true, is very hot, but it's cooling off very rapidly. And it's cooling off so rapidly that it doesn't have the energy to transfer that heat into the pipe. That's why it's not heating up that far down the blowpipe. When we go back into our reheating chambers, we're only in there for a short period of time, and we don't go very far. So again, we're not really heating up that much of the pipe. Now, this is pretty essential because we need the dexterity of our hands. That's why you don't see glass blowers wearing gloves. They might for special occasions if they're doing something very specific on the glass piece and their hands are really close. But it'd be kind of like trying to play guitar with gloves on. It's pretty hard to do. You need the dexterity of hands to be able to turn that pipe back and forth, to be able to pick up the tools and use them. And, well, after so many years of working in hot glass, you don't have any feeling anymore in your hands. You don't really need them. I'm just kidding. I still have feeling in my hands, but you do get a little bit immune to the heat. You get used to it. That's kind of a key component with being a glass blower. You have to be used to the heat. You know, I think all of us are a little bit of a pyro at heart. We all like playing with fire. But you have to be able to stand in front of a 2,000 degree furnace and not be intimidated by it. That's kind of important in glass blowing. And you figure that part out pretty quickly. I know a lot of people that I started off blowing glass with that were maybe in my beginning glass blowing class. They were like, yeah, I want to give this a try. They stood up next to that furnace to take their first gather. I don't want to do this anymore. And that was about it. I'm going back to painting. People ask us a lot of times too if we ever burn ourselves. The answer, of course, is yes. Unfortunately, we do. It's part of the job. You will get cut. You will get burnt. It's part of playing with glass. And if you tend to do it a lot more when you're a beginner, of course. You're still learning the process, and you're touching things you're not supposed to touch. And if you're continually burning yourself all the time, you might want to look at a different career. But usually that's not the case. And of course, we know the glass is extremely hot. We're not touching the glass. That's not usually what gets you. It's just like kind of being a chef in a kitchen. It's usually touching a tool that you didn't think was hot or a surface you didn't think was hot. And it might get you a little bit, but typically it's not too bad. It's usually a pretty easy thing to handle. All right, we got a lot more glass on there now. See, we got that great shape using that newspaper. Now you can see all that coming off of there. Now, most of that is steam coming off of that newspaper. A little bit of smoke, but most of that is steam coming off of that wet newspaper. And we're able to use these wet tools to shape the glass, and it doesn't really affect the glass. You see we got these blocks, they're soaking in water. Now as the glass cools off, water will have a lot more effect on it. But when it's at 2,000 degrees, water's not really going to do much to it. It's not affecting the glass. In fact, the water's not actually even touching the glass. That's something we call the Leidenfrost effect. And you see this at home when you put water into a really hot skillet and it kind of jumps around in there, right? And it doesn't actually just puddle out. It sort of stays in a ball. And that's because the surface tension is so high and the glass is so hot that the water is evaporating before it has a chance to even touch the glass. So we're creating a layer of steam. We're working in a team over here while Patrick is shaping the end of that bubble. Catherine was giving him a little air, blowing into the end of the blowpipe. And now using this marver, this giant steel table, to roll back and forth and cool and shape that gather glass at the same time. Now traditionally these would have been made out of marble, but now we use steel. And you can see it's pretty thick. And that's a thick piece of steel. And it's so thick, right there where he was just touching that glass, it's not hot because it absorbs that heat so quickly and disperses it. Now, if he has a really big piece and he's rolling on there for a long time and using the marver a whole lot, then yeah, eventually it'll heat up a little bit. But in order to shape the glass the way you want, you're going to cool off certain sections so that when you force air into the blowpipe, other areas of the piece will expand. That's how we can control our shape. By controlling the heat distribution throughout the piece is a way we control our shape. All right, getting it nice and hot. Again, just like all the other feet that we made earlier, we're putting that nice little jack line into it, that little crease. It's essential in all glass blown pieces. We need a little crease in the glass, an area where we can break it away from the blowpipe. Now you can see he's created that nice crease, that little jack line in there. Again, they're just blowing up the main form. So just talking to each other, communicating, which is really important when you're working in a team. You want to be communicating to each other. Of course, this is Catherine's design. She's the artist, so she kind of has the final say in what things do. She wants it to look a certain way, so she's going to give her suggestions on how to make it. Now we had somebody online asking about our glasses. Now you can see we're all wearing protective glasses, of course. That's kind of important in the glass studio. Every now and then there might be a stray piece of glass that breaks off the end of a blowpipe or something like that. You want to be able to protect your eyes. Now, I just have regular protective glasses. There's no tint to them. It's not really essential to have tint. The light that's coming out of the reheating chamber and the furnace, it's not bad for your eyes, but it can be a little bit disruptive if you're in front of the furnace for a real long time. So you see some of us like Catherine and Patrick, they have a little bit of a tint to their glasses, and that's just a personal preference to have the tint. And it doesn't look like they're, I don't know, Patrick, are your glasses a special tint? Are they didiniums or anything? Or your glasses, are they a special tint?
Yeah, they're flame working glasses.
Oh, so you do have, okay. Okay, yeah. Yeah, so his are actually didinium glasses, which are a specialized tint, and you mostly use those when you're working in a torch. So when you're flame working, you would use a specialized tint because that's the type of light that comes off of when you're working on a high-powered torch like that. Now, he said that he's using those didinium glasses because there's going to be certain times during the sculpting of this piece that they will use the hot torch over there. And when you're using that hot torch on the glass, it might emit a bright light. And that, of course, will allow him to see a little bit better. Catherine's glasses, they just look like a darker tint styling. I really like her glasses, actually. Yeah, the round goggles, those are super cool. I'm a big fan.
There's a little 9-year-old girl at home who would like to know what.
Well, Catherine, we got a suggestion. There's a little 9-year-old girl at home that was wondering what you think of the name of Bobo. Bobo. Bobo the hippo.
Get all the selection from any of the
Yeah.
name at the end of that.
There you go. So that's in the running, I think. Bobo.
I need proposal and I'll think of the one.
There you go. We're gonna get a little proposal of a few different names out there. Bobo the hippo. That's quite a few. Oh, that's one big name. Wow. Okay. We'll have to start a little list. Get a little list written down. All right, so you see we've blown this out. He's putting a little crease into the top of that bubble. Now, using your imagination, now you can start to see this piece form. I'm guessing that little section up towards the top, that's going to be the head of the hippo. All right? So that little crease that he's putting in there, that's probably right around this section of the glass piece. And always returning to our reheating chamber, you can see he's concentrating the heat on the part that he wants to move around. So he's not going all the way in, he's concentrating most of his heat. Every now and then he goes in for a real deep heat. We call that a flash. That was kind of what I was explaining a lot earlier in the process. Now, although the end of this piece is what we're manipulating, you can see it's a lot hotter than the rest of it, we still want to keep the heat up in the entire piece. Now that section of glass that's just above the jack line there, we call that the moil, the part that's still connected to the blowpipe. All right, but that's an important part. We got to make sure that stays nice and hot too. If that moil starts to break or crack, the whole piece could fall right off the end. And that part's cooling off a lot faster than the rest of it because it has that steel blowpipe underneath it. So that's sucking away a lot of that heat. So that's why every now and then you'll see, like Eric's doing right now, he's going way into the furnace, making sure he gets a nice deep flash, making sure the piece stays nice and warm. So again, back and forth, that reheating chamber. That's a pretty unique view that we have here at the Corning Museum too, being able to see inside that reheating chamber. You're not going to see that at any other museum or any other glass studio for that matter. That's something pretty unique that we have here. People always are wondering if it's a specialized camera that we have inside of there. What allows us to be able to see inside of that reheating chamber? Well, it is actually a regular camera. There's nothing special about the camera itself. We actually go through about 20 of them a day. They burn away really quickly. I'm joking, of course. It is a regular camera, but it's not inside of the reheating chamber. It's actually sitting behind the reheating chamber, and it's looking through a little window. A little specialized window of glass. Now that window of glass is made out of a fused silica glass. It's one of the more pure forms of glass out there. It's got the simplest formula, but it's one of the hardest glasses to manufacture because it has such a high melting point. Fused silica melts at about 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit. It's a lot hotter than our 2,000 degree furnace, and that's why it's able to withstand that heat, protects our camera. Fused silica was invented right here in Corning back in the 1930s, and they weren't really sure what to do with it, actually, when they came up with it. It wasn't until around the 60s when NASA came along, they said they needed something for their space shuttle windows. And Corning said, we had just the thing for you, and they used fused silica to protect the windows on the space shuttles. They also use that in fiber optics. So it's the same type of glass that we use in fiber optics nowadays. Very highly used piece for telecommunications. We've all heard of the internet, right? Yeah. That's how we get all that information shot around on the internet with those fiber optic cables. So now the type of glass we're using, this is a soda lime glass. This is the most common type of glass out there in the world. Most things you come across, like these windows, your bottles at home, stuff like that, it's all made out of a soda lime glass. Now, like all glass, what's the main component, right? Sand. Yeah, silica sand. And it's not the same type of sand that you would find at your beach. You actually mine this out of a quarry, and it's a very fine grained. Here's a sample of it right here. This is silica sand. It's very fine. Now, the other two main components that we add into our glass is soda ash. That's our flux. That actually will lower the melting temperature of our sand so that we can get it down to around 2,000 degrees. And then we have limestone, which is a hardener. This ensures the stability of the glass, make sure that it's not water soluble. So these are our three main components: soda lime, silica, soda ash, and limestone. That's where you get soda lime.
So we've got Bobo.
All right, so they're talking back and forth. They're getting ready to put on some decoration here. So you see she's applying a little bit of glass. You can see just pulls it away to exactly the right thickness that they're looking for. Oh, cuts it free. That's actually going to be the mouth. That's what that is there. That's the little mouth bit. So you can see you're looking up on the monitor, we're already starting to smile at us. Do you have a question? Yes. Give me 1 second here. It's a little hard to hear when I'm back there with all the blowers. Go ahead. How much weight is that? That's a good question. With all that material, right now, I would say that's probably maybe around 10 pounds of glass. I know it doesn't seem like a whole lot. It's blowing out, but yeah, as the piece gets bigger and gets blown out more and it gets further away from your body on the blowpipe, exactly, the physics change and it starts to feel a lot heavier. So a piece that's maybe 10 pounds of glass, especially as it's extended off the end of the pipe, that might feel like 20, 30 pounds of glass. Yeah. Any other questions while I'm out here? You have one up there? What's your question? Go ahead. How hot is it in the heating chamber? It's about 2,000 degrees Fahrenheit. So pretty hot. And give you an idea of how hot that is, it's about as hot as lava coming out of a volcano. That's right. Another question over here? Yeah. Go ahead. I'm not exactly sure. I can ask. It'll take all night to cool down, of course. So it won't be out until at least tomorrow. And I'm not sure if it's going to go out on display or not, but I'll find out. Yeah. Good. You have a question over here too? Oh, you got a name suggestion? Yes. What's your name suggestion? Okay. Hippotas and hippotassium? Okay. Hippotas and hippotassia. Gotcha. Okay. We're going to add those to the list, all right? We got a little list going. Maurice? Maurice. Maurice is, oh, that's a good one. Yeah, that's a good one too. I like that. Yeah, it does. Sometimes, the names just, you hear it and it just seems like it would work. Yeah. Oh, there we go. So I missed a couple things. Look at that. We've got a couple eyeballs on there now. It's got the mouth. There, she's using the back of this tool to create the little indentations in the middle of the eye. So I like when you're making things with a lot of expression and stuff like that. It's just, we go back into the reheating chamber, it's like it's looking at you. In the back of the reheating chamber, it's always kind of funny. It's an interesting viewpoint. So just a little bit more, I was talking about some of the different types of glass. a little bit more on the history of that is there's actually 5 main categories of glass out there. I've touched on 2 of them, right? We've talked about the fused silica glass that's in the back of our reheating chamber, and the soda lime glass, which is the glass that we're using right now. Now, besides those 2, there's also leaded glass. We've heard of lead crystal and things like that, right? Then we have borosilicate glass. Now, you may not know borosilicate, but you've probably heard of the name Pyrex, right? Pyrex is a name brand of borosilicate glass. We should all know Pyrex. We're here in Corning, okay? And they came up with Pyrex. Now, besides the borosilicate glass, we also have aluminosilicate glass. Not a lot of people have heard of aluminosilicate glass, but I can almost guarantee most of you have touched aluminosilicate glass because that's the type of glass that's on our smartphones. All right? That's the type of glass they use in laptops and things like that. It's cured with a chemical, and you can actually send an electrical charge. That's why your finger works with touching it, and it's very scratch resistant. Yes, that would be Gorilla Glass. Yep. And again, that's another Corning invention that they came up with. And a lot of their things that they come up with here in Corning, they come up with them a lot sooner than they're actually used in the industry. It's like the fused silica I was talking about. They came up with that years before they actually used it. Fiber optics was kind of the same way. Before it actually became mainstream in the industry, they started producing it. A lot of people said it was kind of like making gas stations before there was cars. But Gorilla Glass is the same thing. They came up with that years before there was smartphones. And now there's a huge use for it. So I really admire the innovation that they have here at Corning Incorporated to be able to come up with these ideas far beyond their actual use in the industry. So I mentioned those 5 main types of glass, and with those 5 main types of glass, Corning actually has almost 60,000 patents on different formulas within those 5 categories. So it's an extremely large amount of different types of glass out there. Yes? With quartz. I don't work with quartz, and we definitely don't use any quartz here in the studio, but quartz is definitely a tough glass to work with, also because of its high melting point, things like that. Yeah, you need hydrogen. So it's extremely difficult, but there are studios out there that work in quartz crystal, things like that. But that's also one of those glasses, like we'll use quartz inside of our kilns because our kilns don't get that hot, and we'll use those quartz a lot of times will protect the elements, the electrical elements that's inside of our furnaces. Yes, you have a question? Let me grab him real quick. Go ahead. What is it again? Johnny Teska. Okay, that's another. We'll have to add that one to the list. He was asking how much these dragon vases would be. Well, you'd have to ask G about that because he's actually the one that made them. But technically, the answer is priceless because all of these things that we make here in the glass studio, none of them are for sale. So we don't actually put price tags on any of this stuff. We make it for entertainment purposes, entertainment and education. And we end up, sometimes we'll raffle pieces off, things like that. And we donate a lot to charitable events. So they usually just go out in the world that way. So we don't actually put price tags on things like that. All right, let's get back to the action here. Things are moving along, aren't they? Yeah. It's looking good. Our hippo is starting to get some character. Got some ears on it. Got some eyes. Okay, so those are the eyes. What she was pressing in earlier, that's the nostrils. Okay, so I was a little off on my statement. So those bulbs right there, those are the eyes, and she's adding a little pupil in the middle there, a little dot of glass. And you can see when it goes into our reheating chamber, it's starting to look at us now. So we're adding some more bits, a little bit more color. Get out your way. There we are, cooling off the glass a little bit using this pipe cooler, keeping everything nice and cooled off. And this is kind of what I was talking about earlier. You had the question about the weight. Now, the weight really hasn't changed all that much. It's the same amount of glass. We've put a few bits of glass onto the end, so it's maybe a little bit heavier, but as the piece expands and it gets farther off of that blowpipe, the physics of it change. So being able to cool that pipe so that you can get your hand farther up the blowpipe, that certainly helps being able to balance that weight. So the closer you can get your hand to that 2,000 degree glass, the better. I know that sounds a little weird, but yeah. Yeah, that's, like I said, that's being comfortable with the heat, and being able to put your hand real close to intense heat like that. So we're adding a little bit of glass underneath the mouth. There you go. I was a little. I had to make sure I had to clarify there. Those are the teeth. A little kind of tusk teeth hanging down for the hippo. That's what we're adding in right now. And you can see she's using that hot torch to really spot heat a certain area. Torch she's using, that's natural gas and oxygen, natural gas and oxygen. So adding the oxygen into that torch increases its temperature. And you can get a really hot head torch on there, and that'll help shape the glass. All right, here we go. Adding on the other tooth to the other side. All right, nicely done. Oh, there he is. It really brings out the character once you start bringing it all together and you see it go into the furnace like that. Now you notice that G. Brian's on the pipe here. He's turning it, and he's rotating it back and forth, but he's rotating pretty slowly. And when he goes into the reheating chamber, he maybe only turns it 180 degrees, another 180 degrees, kind of back and forth. And that's a pretty typical style when you're using sculptural work. When you're making blown work like this, you tend to turn a little bit faster in more complete circles. When you're working on sculptural stuff, you tend to rotate halfway and then halfway back the other direction. And you do this so that everything kind of stays more centered. If you kept rotating in one direction, there's a chance that everything will kind of spin and then it'll twist. It'll start to twist if you keep rotating in that same direction. So rotating 180 degrees one way, then back the other way, and back and forth, that keeps everything nice and balanced. And it's a good way to work when you're working on sculptural stuff. Okay, so looks like we've got the features on the head all settled. So they're talking now. They're going to start adding on those feet, right? Remember those way back in the beginning? We made all those 4 feet and put them away in our garage. And you can see Eric over there. We've got a hot side and a cool side to the garage. So the right side of the garage is a little bit cooler. That's where everything was being kept. And he's rotating it over to the left side of the garage, and that's where the flame is actually coming into the garage, so it's a little bit hotter over there. So we can start to heat up those feet. And then we'll flash them into our reheating chambers and then begin to attach them. Now our reheating chambers, they're about the same temperature of our furnace, right around 2,000 degrees, maybe a little bit hotter. And we turn those off at the end of the day. All those reheating chambers all got shut off. They take about an hour in the morning to come up to temperature to around 2,000 degrees. Now the furnace in the middle that all of our glass came out of, that stays on all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, never shuts off. And this used to be the same this location right here was actually where the Steuben factory was, when Steuben glass used to be here. And when they closed down, we opened up this amphitheater, this beautiful amphitheater. It's one of the most beautiful hot shops I've ever worked in, and a lot of people regard it as one of the best hot shops in the world, actually. Arguably one of the best. There's a lot of great ones out there, though. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. There's a lot of great ones. This one is really good. And we built this about 2 years ago, and that furnace has been on ever since. That furnace has been on for the last 2 years. And they're planning to keep it on for another 5 years before they actually have to do any repairs to it. So they're trying to get about 7 years off the tank lining that's inside of there. And when you do go to make the repairs, you have to cool everything down nice and slow. So the inside of that furnace now is coated in glass, so if we just turned it off, everything would crack apart. It would destroy the inside of that furnace. So in order to make those repairs, it will take about a week and a half or so of time to cool that furnace down slow enough to where we can actually get inside and do the work. That's why it's more efficient just to keep it on. You can't exactly just turn it off. But it makes me really happy that I just work here and I don't pay the gas bills. Yeah, because they can get pretty pricey. That's certainly one of the larger overheads in blowing glass is just the equipment. Running the equipment, keeping everything up and running is probably one of your largest expenses. All right, so we're heating up. Looks like we're about ready. It's got the end of that foot nice and hot. Here we go. There he is. Attach one little foot there. There it is. Nice. All right. 1 down, 3 to go. I've been enjoying being up here and listening to them work, because I don't know if you can hear, but they're talking in French. And I don't understand French, but it's really nice to hear that. And sometimes they communicate to each other. We just have to play along, and then they'll let us know what they're talking about after it. But it was like I was saying, that there really isn't a language barrier in glass. As long as you understand the material and understand the process, that you can all work together. That's beautiful. Now you can see that Patrick is using that hot torch, that concentrated torch. He's concentrating the heat on just the end of the foot. That way, it'll be a lot hotter than the rest of it, and it'll attach. Once it's on there, it's on there. It's fused on. All right, here we go. Back foot number 2. He lines it up. That's a great shot right there. You can really see the connection. Taps it away. Nice. Yeah, I'm excited about that too. Right? Yeah. We can clap for that. It's coming along. You can see it's a process. It's definitely involved, especially making sculptural work, making larger work like this. It takes a little time, a little patience to make it all happen. Typically in glass, things move along pretty quickly. It's one of those processes that you have to finish as soon as you start. It's not like ceramics or painting or something like that where you can put the piece aside and say, oh, I'll just come back to it tomorrow, finish it. Doesn't work that way. So once you start, you pretty much have to finish. That's why a lot of things, they work pretty quickly in the glass studio. Now we've been working on this piece a little over an hour, and that's a good amount of time to be on one single piece of glass. Well, that's a good question. I'm not sure how long they're going to anneal this. It is a blown object, so the inside's hollow. That's going to cut down the annealing time. The thicker a piece of glass is, the longer it'll have to anneal. But I would guess that they would put at least, maybe a 16-hour cycle on something like this. Let it cool down really nice and slow. It might even be a little bit longer. I'm not really sure. I mean, you can't over-anneal something. Right? You can definitely under anneal it. So to be safe, we might even just put a 24-hour cycle just to be safe. Yeah. How much is it going to cost in the end? Well, I'm not really sure what the final home for this piece is going to be, if it is even going to be for sale or not. That's all up to Catherine there. But they were actually wondering, one person asked earlier if this was going to be on display tomorrow. I'm not really sure. I'll have to find out. What's the question there? Yeah, we definitely would take a picture, put it on the website once it does come out.
We have some great intel from up in the roost. She's actually donating this piece to Tanner's Paws for charity.
Oh, great. Yeah. So we just got, what was the cause again?
Tanner's Paws.
Tanner's Paws. So this piece will actually be donated to Tanner's Paws for charity. So it'll go to, I believe that's an animal rescue type of situation. So this is going to go to an animal rescue type of charity, Tanner's Paws, which that's great. That's a great cause. To be able to donate the piece for that, and maybe they'll be able to auction off and get a little money for it. I'm not sure. Yes. Can you say the second part? What preserves the brilliance of the glass? Because he's asking about all the constant reheating and everything. Well, the nice thing about glass is that you can pretty much reheat it indefinitely. The color itself, the clear is always going to stay the same way. Now, the color can burn out or it can dull out, but you notice that all this color that we put on here, most of it, except for maybe the white, we have clear over it. So that clear is what's protecting the color and the brilliance. Now, glass is a great recyclable material because you can indefinitely remelt it and reuse it over and over and over again, and it's never going to it doesn't really have a lifespan. It's going to always stay. Yeah. Oh, this is great here. We got the piece almost finished up. We got all 4 legs on there, or all 4 feet. There goes. You see, she's Using that hot torch to just smooth out any sharpness that might have been left behind from those punties that was on the bottom of the feet. And she's just shaping everything up, taking a few last little looks, make sure that the feet are the right way that she wants before everything sets up. And you can see Eric is concentrating that torch. Again, he's heating up certain parts of the body, but he's really concentrating the torch on that section of the glass that's still connected to the blowpipe, making sure that stays nice and warm. Now, it's definitely increased in weight now that we've put the feet on there. But even more so, it goes back to the physics that I was talking about. Now you have a lot of that weight that's off-centered. You got the feet that are sticking off to the side. So for somebody like G. Brian, we're switching up right now to Patrick, but as they're carrying that piece around, you can really feel that. You can feel that weight pulling off to one side. And that's what really makes it more challenging, especially when you're making sculptural type work like this. So using that torch, making sure that those feet are nice and warm. So now they're using this marver. There we go, making sure that it'll stand when it comes to. So we want to be able to have this piece stand up. Now I was just asking Catherine briefly. She believes it will be out tomorrow afternoon sometime. So if you're around the studio, your tickets are good for 2 days. Unless this is your second day, then sorry. But your tickets are good for 2 days. There's a lot to see here in the museum. I'm sure you've gotten that already. It's a little overwhelming at first. I've been here for the whole summer now. This is my first summer working here, and I'm about 3.5 months in. And I still discover stuff all the time going through the collection. But she said she does believe it'll be out of the annealer sometime tomorrow afternoon. So if you're around, you can come back to the amphitheater and it'll be out on display. Now, of course, if you're not around, we will be taking pictures of it and we'll be putting it onto our website. We'll put it on our website and also our Facebook page. So definitely follow us on social media. We have an Instagram, we have a Facebook. We even have a YouTube channel. Like I said, this is going to be a live feed. Now, it won't go to the YouTube channel right away, but eventually the live feed will be put onto the YouTube channel as well. So you can revisit the demo at your own leisure. You can also see some of our other demos that we've had throughout the year. A lot of great ones out there. So it looks like they're getting pretty close to the end here. Now, one of the final touches is going to be the tail. All right, now that is the part that's still connected to the blowpipe. So I'm just kind of guessing here, but it looks like they're setting up an area where they're going to take the piece off of the blowpipe and they'll set it here. And then that area where it's connected to the blowpipe, they'll cover that up with the tail of the hippo. So everything will kind of be completed all at the end. And then it'll go straight from here right into our annealer where it can cool down nice and slow overnight. All right, looks like they're getting things together here, getting ready. Going on the top over here. Everyone's kind of got to come together for their final push. There it goes, breaks it free, nice and clean. Now we have to work quickly. We only have a little bit of time while it's out of the, out of the heat now. Everything's kind of cooling down. We want to make sure we move along pretty quick. There we go, putting on our tail. That's going to cover up that little spot where the pipe was connected. And also the nice finishing touch for the hippo. We'll cut that free. Got a little torch. And we'll just smooth it all out with the torch. Eric's got his gloves on and ready. So he's keeping those gloves nice and warm. Okay, she says. All right, top left here. We'll set it in there. Beautifully done. There it is. Let's give it up. Nice, beautiful piece by Catherine Labonté and Patrick Premier.